The lower house on Friday made amendments to the Quarantine Act, Chapter 271, to include COVID-19 on the list of viruses for which measures must be put in place to control the spread. Tourism Minister Dr. Clarice Modeste-Kerwin presented the motion to the House on Friday on behalf of Health Minister Honorable Nicholas Steele. She explained that the amendments to the motion will consider individuals arriving and leaving the country by air or sea, testing, quarantine period, among other health protocols, to ease the burden that infectious diseases usually place on countries. The amendments will create flexibility and openness due to the diversity and newness of the virus.
This legislation was formulated in a time and a period when other diseases presented themselves. Covered SARS, other coronavirus, and so on, but it does not cover the COVID-19 disease in these regulations. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are asking permission to amend the regulations so that it can serve the purpose for which it was intended, to prevent disease from coming into our country, infectious disease in particular, and to prevent the spread of these infections.
Prime Minister Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell supported the motion. He stressed the importance of taking precautionary measures and not relying on luck in the face of a crisis.
The government cannot take responsibility to pay for tests. I think it has to be clearly stated. Government, someone wants to come to our country, it is clearly stated that you have to get your PCR test. It's like you have to come to a country, you must get to an airline to get a flight. If the flight is costly, you decide whether you can travel or not. So if you have to pay for a test, you decide whether you can afford it or not. And that's the nature of what you're doing. So government will not want to take responsibility for paying, although I didn't hear that word, I only heard the question about suppose somebody have to stay in for how many days or weeks, what will happen, the cost.
Continuing the news, while Grenada will be involved in discussions at the multilateral level about a vaccine for COVID-19, the country will not be rushing into any premature decision. That assurance from Minister for Health, Honorable Nicholas Steele, who was speaking during a meeting of the House of Representatives on Friday. He did say, however, that it is necessary for Grenada to join the conversations about a vaccination policy.
So Grenada will participate with the WHO, Pan American Health Organization, on discussions of vaccinations that we are seeing from other nations being developed at present. That is not the same as rushing into. That is saying that we are going to participate in the discussion, the exchange of knowledge from the beginning, which will allow us to make the educated and informed decisions as we go along. But we will not rush into this. And it is necessary that we recognize that there should not be a fear of vaccination of any type once the proper development procedures are followed.
Minister Steele added that while there are no new cases of COVID-19, they are monitoring the continued rise in cases in the US and now Canada, which has gone over the limit in terms of the number of people affected with the virus. He says they will monitor emerging developments in Canada, following which an appropriate decision will be made.
The way that the science observes it, WHO and PAHO, is that after a period, if consistently they have remained above 20 cases per 100,000 or rise significantly, then the adjustment is made. So we observe them over the next couple of days to a week and will make the appropriate adjustment. The hope is that this would not be the case.
You're watching the National Report. Stay with us, we'll have more news in just a moment.
Prime Minister Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell will deliver a national address on Sunday, September 13th, 2020 at 7 p.m. He will announce a cabinet reshuffle, a customary practice at the midpoint of the current term of office. Tune in to the Government Information Service Channel 22 the GIS Facebook page, and other media outlets and social media platforms at 7 p.m. on Sunday for the live announcement of the Cabinet reshuffle.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell says it is time for people to put personal feelings aside and see the benefits of major development projects being undertaken by government that will create additional employment. During Friday's meeting of the House of Representatives, Dr. Mitchell said once government initiates serious activity to bring development to the country, some immediately oppose it. He pointed out that major projects like the Melville Street cruise ship port, the Port Louis project and others all came under heavy criticism over perceived negative environmental impact. Now some are taking issue with the Livera project.
Now the Livera project. Chinese want to take over Grenada. Chinese want to take over Grenada. I mean, it's amazing, you know. Chinese want to take over Grenada. Because if it was Americans that were coming and build those projects, you'd hear Americans taking over, selling the country after Americans. Jobs have been created, development have been created. The farmers are benefiting from development. Look at that Silver Sands project. They oppose that too. All sorts of persons became politicians overnight at Silver Sands. Some of them living close to Silver Sands, the property. Watch that place being a dump. For years, someone comes spending millions of dollars creating one of the best property. They oppose it.
The Prime Minister says the Livera project, like the Silver Sands project, will benefit farmers who will be given contracts to supply fresh produce. Employment in the hospitality industry will also be created.
The Livera project, scores of farmers will be contracted to produce food for that property. We should be so happy. They're opposing it, all sorts of persons and people as so-called aspiring politicians that can't get 10 votes when they run. But they're demonstrating against the project. Demonstrating. All kind of failed politicians, failed leader, all kinds of stuff emerge up there to oppose the project, Chinese taking over Grenada. Right, Mr. Speaker, it's about time. It's about time we learn to grow up. This NNP, Mr. Speaker, party which I am part of, who has been in opposition twice, they could never say that this NNP oppose any serious project that the previous government then, in both cases, brought into the country.
And finally in the news, government is taking issue with some businesses, which it says are flouting the rules and regulations which remain in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. During a meeting of the House of Representatives on Friday, Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell said some hotel facilities in particular have been holding what he referred to as serious parties, which they believe is a deliberate act being done by people who should know better. Dr. Mitchell says the Cabinet, Prime Minister and committee responsible for giving permission for social events gave no such permission, therefore the law was broken.
I want to make it very clear. The Cabinet, the Prime Minister, and the committee who is responsible for giving permission gave no permission. Let's get it very clear. And I'm angry because it sends the perception that some people in this country can do as they want. And poor people must be allowed to be disciplined or to be spoken about if they do the same thing. This government is not a class government. It's a government for all the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. We have seen this class thing in this country before. We've seen it. I grew up in it. I want no part of it. And I will not be heading a government that participates in sending a message that some people in our country could do as they want and some must be dealt in the opposite direction.
The Prime Minister says he has taken the necessary steps to ensure that the law is adhered to.
I have therefore spoken to the Commissioner and his team. The law of the land must be adhered to. The Prime Minister has to obey the law of the land. The Governor General has to obey the law of the land. All ministers do this. The Speaker, President of the Senate, tooth moon all of us. And therefore no one, Mr. Speaker, should be allowed to do as they wish because they're bigger than everybody else.
With that story, we end the national report for Friday, 11th September 2020. Recapping the headline, Lower House makes amendments to Quarantine Act, Chapter 271. That's all from us here at the newsroom. On behalf of all who made this newscast possible, management and staff of the Government Information Service, I'm Delroy Louison, thanking you for joining us. We'll see you next time.